That brings us to number 27 here, and that's going to be the Tennessee Titans. So I actually had them a little higher than you did, but we averaged it out. I think Will Levis is a big question mark. Joel Haas, I was texting him. He's my go-to guy for college football knowledge. I said, Joel, if you take Will Levis, put him in a situation with 3 really solid, proven veteran wide receivers, decent running backs, and a team that is investing in its offensive line, do you think Will Levis could be a good starting quarterback? And he said, I think Will Levis is going to be a career backup. So he said no, but I like what the Titans have been doing for Will Levis, with one slight caveat that they fired Mike Vrabel, one of the best coaches in the NFL. But they did bring in Brian Callahan, an offensive-based coach. He's been the quarterback's coach in Cincinnati, or offensive coordinator rather, but he was a quarterback's coach for a long time before that. So in terms of scheme, in terms of what they're going for, I think the personnel they brought in matches the coaching change, but it's not a coaching change I would have made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. Although, Vrabel, I agree with you, should not have been fired. I think Brian Callahan was definitely one of the better choices they could have gone with. So I think at least on that front, if they were going to change Vrabel, it made sense. And if you really squint your eyes at it, they were kind of spinning their wheels and not really going anywhere. So I do see the idea behind getting rid of Vrabel. And I agree with you also. I do like that they've tried to bring in the help around Will Levis the same way. I like the offense. I like Tony Pollard and Ty J. Spears as a 1-2 punch. I think that's going to be great for keeping pressure off of Will Levis. Although Ridley, Hopkins, and Boyd are all considered by many to be has-beens at this point, I think they still have enough left in the tank. Well, I mean, a lot of people are just like, which is weird because Hopkins still had a 1,000-yard season, as did Ridley. I just think it's just that they're not as good as they were because they had pretty high peaks at one point.
I still think Ridley. We're going to talk about Jacksonville soon. Or wait, no, we're not actually, because you think they're better than I do. So we're actually not talking about them in this episode. But I don't like the Jags. We'll save that for the next one. I think they completely wasted Calvin Ridley last year. I think he still has something in the tank. Titans gave him $92 million. They seem to think so as well. So I like what they're doing. Tyler Boyd is a good veteran. If they can get anything out of Treylon Burks, it's a plus. So we'll see. Same with Chig as well. Chig Okonkwo didn't live up to expectations. The thing I really like about this team, you talked about the 1-2 punch at running back. They have dynamic runners. We know that they can hit, that extra pace. Like what's the expression? Like that extra gear.
Extra gear. Yeah.
Like Spears, super fast. Pollard, he's going to be 2 years removed from the injury. I think he'll be in a better shape. J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski on the left side of this line, I think is a big deal for Levis, a big deal for the run game. Skoronski was a tackle in the draft, but they moved him to guard. People seem to think he projects to be like an elite guard where he could be just a really good left tackle. People think J.C. Latham can be an elite left tackle. So they've been loading it up. They brought in Cushenberry, as I mentioned earlier, from Denver, who he struggled for a little while, but he actually had a really good year last year by the numbers. I think they should slide Daniel Brunskill of 49ers. I don't want to say fame, but former 49er. I think maybe put him at guard. Maybe it's a little risky to put Verdunes at right tackle, but Petit Frere is like kind of a nobody, so I could see them maybe going that route. I think the line has been really refurbished. And not to spoil my Ravens talk, which we're going to save for when we get to very towards the top of these power rankings, but I think Derrick Henry was kind of wasted by this team because the offensive line had a reduction. They lost Jack Conklin, and then a couple years later they lost Taylor Lewan. I think they've done a great job to restock, and I think they're prioritizing the right things with this offense. But it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Is Will Levis the guy? What is your thoughts on Will Levis?
Will Levis, he weirds me out because he's shown flashes of big warning label career backup, but he's also shown the flashes of this guy could be something, right? Which was kind of, to me, the big thing with him at Kentucky, too. He'd do something incredible, but then he'd make the most boneheaded pocket awareness move you've ever seen and take a stupid sack. So to me, like, he's so up and down. He kind of reminds me of Justin Fields in a way, where Justin Fields, he'd do something really good sometimes, but then he'd also do something really stupid. Will Levis, they brought in a lot of supporting cast, so we at least need to see some improvement from him. And if he can earn himself a third year, I think he's got a chance to be a starting quarterback in this league and be the Titans guy moving forward. But he has to show it. And I think he can, because I think they've brought in enough help where you can't say he's like on a terrible team that gave him no help. Like, he has enough help to where we should see some flashes out of him.
Yeah, I agree. We saw that his first game. Remember that? He had 4 touchdowns. He completely diced the Falcons up, made the culture rank. He's like, Will Levis, Penn State alum. Like, everybody was talking about that. And then if you look at what happened after that, I think people forget how horrible he was at times. But they needed to make the move because Ryan Tannehill was also pretty rough as well. To me, it's like, we know he has got a cannon of an arm. He's shown it off a little bit, as I mentioned there, in that Falcons game, a few other games. I guess it's going to be Brian Callahan calling plays. Like, he didn't really do that a lot in Cincinnati. Like, is that going to go well? But I think the pieces are there in place that this team could sneak to 6 or 7 wins, which is where they were last year at 7-10. Defensively, they're kind of in a weird spot, but they paid a ton of money for L'Jarius Sneed, who had a great year with the Chiefs last year. They drafted T'Vondre Sweat in the second round to be kind of their, swallow up the run game all the time, just giant defensive tackle. Jeffrey Simmons as well is on that D-line. We know he's a proven commodity. Harold Landry's on this team. He's been doing his thing for a while. They brought in Chidobe Awuzie, who's coming off some injuries with the Bengals, but has proven to be a competent corner in the past. And then they brought in Jamal Adams, which low risk, high reward, I think. I was reading up on Denard Wilson, who's coming over from the Ravens, defensive backs coach. He's their new defensive coordinator. He was talking, it sounds like he wants to use Jamal Adams because he was like, we're gonna hit people all the time. It sounds like he wants to play rough, maybe even a little dirty. Kenneth Murray is another type who I was reading up on him a little bit. Chargers fans basically said he shoots out of a cannon. He can hit anyone, but he can't cover anyone in coverage, which I think would explain his poor performance on places like Pro Football Focus. So overall, this defense has some holes, but I think also has some really, really good players left over from the Rabel era. What do you think are differences of opinion here? Like, are you just less confident in the Levis side of things, the receiver side of things? D-Hop's hurt as well, but only expected to miss 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, so my thing with this, especially this division as a whole, is that I have more confidence in the other 3 teams to be good. Like the Texans, if they're not good, I'll quit talking about football forever, I guess, because they should be a really good team, right? Mm-hmm. And the Colts, a lot of potentials there. The Jaguars, I really like some of their players. My problem is with the Titans is that they're in, I would say, a pretty good division, which I think is where their big issue is. And yeah, I'm a little concerned about Will Levis because he has to be more consistent because he was really bad at times last year. So if he can iron out a lot of that really bad play, then great, and they're going to be a better team. But the problem is we don't know that for certain, which is my concern. But I also do really like their defense. I think that's kind of in a weird way why they kind of let Vrabel go, because they knew they had a pretty solid defense. They just had to add a few more pieces to. So maybe they were confident, like, well, we like what Vrabel built, so we'll keep it around, and so we need to fix the offense now. And I like a lot of the players. I like Snead. I like that they also signed Quandre Diggs, too. I thought that was a good move for them. Even like Roger McCreary and Chidobe Awuzie, McCreary is kind of a smaller name. Awuzie is coming off some injuries, but they're both solid corners, too. Yep. Like, I like what they're doing. I think there's a good chance this defense is going to be the strong point of this team, and I think they're really going to be very helpful going forward for Levis's development as well. Just making sure he has time, keeping the opposing offenses off the field. I think it's going to be a good move for them.